this on Zoom. So, all right, I wanted to make some comments about the consolidated plan that we have coming up today. And I first, thank you for taking on this, continuing to work on this critical issue and one of growing, a growing problem for us. And I apologize for weighing in on it rather late in the process. I think the concern that I had about this, about the process and the associated report is a lack of emphasis and a lack of a close analysis to the question of overall housing supply. How does the market respond to overall supply? And in terms of impediments to affordable housing, how does overall market supply play into the needs that specific groups have that we focus on? I'm concerned that overly segmenting the market can obscure some of the general supply issues. And this is a matter that I hope will, going forward, be more tightly integrated with affordable housing planning and policy in the future. So thank you. That's what I have.
Thank you, Michael. I hope you'll be able to stay tuned in the meeting today as we get a staff report on the consolidated plan and what went into it before we take action on it today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all that we have signed up for oral communication at the first part of the meeting. We do have an individual signed up for the latter part of oral communication towards the end of the meeting. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of the consent agenda. I'd like to announce some changes to the consent agenda from when it was first published. Today we have 15 items on the consent agenda, 2 items under minutes. The minutes for March 24th, 2020 were added. Under land use and transportation, we have 4 items. For item B and for item E, the bid award memo was added to the packet. We have 1 item under health and human services. The second item, item G, has been pulled from the consent agenda. We have 6 items under housing services and 1 item under service district for lighting. What are the wishes of the commission with regard to the modified consent agenda?
Move for approval, Madam Chair.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt today's consent agenda. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously 5-0. Next, we have a presentation on our response to this COVID-19 crisis. We'd like to call up Marnie Kyle, our Director of Health and Human Services.
Okay.
And for everyone on Zoom, we do have a presentation today, so hopefully you can all see that just fine.
Good morning, Chair Harrington and board and Zoom friends out there. So as Chair Harrington said, I'm Marnie Kyle. I'm the Director of Health and Human Services. And today I want to give a very high-level overview of our reopening planning that's happening in Washington County. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So, I'll start, of course, with, as usual, the numbers, and those are as of May 4th at 8 a.m. These are cumulative numbers, so they are since February 28th. Washington County has had a total of 528 cases, 115 hospitalizations, We are testing an average of 264 people a day in the last week throughout Washington County. So cumulatively, there's been just over 93, almost 9,400 tests completed in Washington County. And you can see also the numbers for the state of Oregon. So next slide, please. So Oregon framework. We are learning more, sometimes hourly, from the governor's office about the Oregon framework for reopening. We're following the guidance and getting more information every day. So as a reminder, it's really important to understand that Governor Brown is the one that has the authority to lift her executive orders. So this plan is so that we're prepared as a county for reopening once the governor lifts those orders. So the governor has provided some prerequisites that will need to be met before jurisdictions are able to reopen our businesses and other activities. So the first is declining prevalence of COVID-19. This is defined as decreases in emergency room visits that are related to COVID-19-like symptoms and reduced hospital admissions. The second is robust case investigation, contact tracing, and capacity of local jurisdictions to provide isolation and quarantine. And what's described is that we'll need at least 15 FTE per 100,000 within a jurisdiction. By our estimates, and also taking into account some national evaluation of the need for contact tracing, for Washington County, that's somewhere between 90 and 100 FTE. And we're working on that plan now. You'll hear a little bit more about that. The third area is increased COVID-19 testing, and the metric for that is that we have the capacity to provide 30 tests per 10,000 people. And then the last prerequisite or gating criteria is adequate hospital capacity for surge, and that's been defined as the ability to handle a 20% increase in patients due to COVID-19. And that also includes PPE, and the standard for personal protective equipment for the region is that we have a 30-day supply.
I have a question about the testing. Should I ask now or at the end? So you talked about the testing of 30 per 100 for 10,000.
Right.
So who controls that? Because I understand that the guidelines have been modified by OHA about who is recommended for testing and the guidelines for administering a test.
Right.
But does Washington County through the EOC control either the guidelines of who can get tested, and then does it control the distribution of tests?
Right. So yes and no. No, we don't control the amount of the capacity of testing, because there's a lot of different layers of testing. So there is Oregon State Public Health Lab testing that's available. There is also private labs, hospitals, clinics, and some national testing organizations that are coming into our community. They don't necessarily have to let us know if they're doing testing and who they're testing or how much they're charging. But we are trying to collect as much of that information as possible, and we now have a new testing area on our Washington County COVID-19 website. So you can go onto the website and see what information has been shared with us about who's doing testing, when they're doing testing. The other thing that I'll say about the testing is we are also developing, as part of this plan, and you'll hear a little bit more about it, is the ability for public health, so that would be Washington County Public Health, to do hotspot testing. So we're working with Metro West Ambulance, Virginia Garcia, Neighborhood Health Center to assure that we have that capacity as well.
Thank you.
Another follow-up question. For opening, you reference as a parameter 15 contact tracers per 100,000. But I remember a couple of weeks ago, you said that really, when we ramp up our own internal forces to do the contact tracing, that a industry standard or public health science standard is 30 per 100,000.
So the standard for testing is 30 per 10,000 capacity to test 30 people per 10,000. The standard for contact tracing, there's been a couple of standards. We've been using a national standard that was set by a national public health organization, which estimated that Washington County would need 90 to 180 FTE. The Oregon guidelines that came out yesterday, their standard was 15 per 100,000.
Which struck me as almost exactly half of what you had suggested we should be, because you had talked about 180 people, given that we have 600,000 people. So my question is, this 15 standard, is that simply just to get us started and opening up, but that we really do need to double that at some point to really make a meaningful difference from a science and public health standpoint?
Yeah. So right now we have different guidance coming out from our national organization in the state of Oregon. So I think we'll be looking at that really closely. We have been planning based on the 90 to 180. So our plan has been based on that guidance, but I think that we'll be able to get a better understanding from OHA because they also have some state support that they might be calculating into the need for local governments, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Next. Public health, what we are so proud of in Washington County with this board and with our community is that this is a public health informed phased approach. Our governor, you all as our board of commissioners, and all of our leaders in Washington County are really using this informed public health approach. So the approach is broken into 3 phases, and each of those phases, moving through those phases really is dependent on the data that we talked about that's part of the prerequisite or gating criteria, because we can't go backwards on that. So as a reminder, if Washington County sees a rebound of cases, hospitalizations, if our public health system or our healthcare system becomes overwhelmed, we may be making recommendations to move backwards towards the more restrictive levels of physical distancing and protective measures. So it's not necessarily a linear one-way direction as we move through these phases. And so the phases really, phase 1 is opening some businesses, and we'll talk a little bit more about what those are, with physical distancing, face cloth coverings, and recommendations for people that are high risk, over 65, or have medical conditions to continue to stay home, to stay safe. And then as we move into phase 2, it's really a lot of the same recommendations, a little bit more leniency with businesses opening, increased in the number of gatherings that are allowed. But there will continue to be physical distancing guidelines and continued recommendations for face coverings. And then phase 3 is what we really know the least about, and there's still a lot of questions about the size of gatherings that will be allowed during phase 3. Does that mean, for example, large venues, concert halls, movie theaters, go back to full capacity, sporting events? So all of that is still being discussed and reviewed. Okay, so now I'm getting into a little bit of some of our assumptions. So what we're recommending for reopening phase decision-making process, we will be bringing back the full reopening plan to the board. We are going to be asking for board input on the plan and eventually board approval of the plan. Once the board has approved the plan, public health will monitor the gating criteria or the prerequisite criteria, and make a recommendation about whether we're ready to move to a new phase, or in the beginning, whether we're ready to move to phase 1. That recommendation would go to the county administrator, who would approve the recommendation, and then our EOC and our public information officer and everyone would get hard at work making sure that the public, the businesses, and everybody impacted by moving through the phases is notified. And you'll see in this graphic that it looks as if it's always moving in one direction, but as that reminder that there would be times that public health may recommend that we move backwards to a previous phase. Okay. So some assumptions that we're developing this plan based on. So one is we are really following the governor's guidance, and that the plan would be brought, discussed, and approved by our board, that it's a phased approach with regional coordination, and that physical distancing and face covering will probably be with us for a long time. That we will continue to ask people that are at high risk for COVID, severe illness from COVID, that we will continue to ask them to telecommute, to stay home as much as possible and protect themselves. And the EOC role is really about supporting our community as we move through these phases, and we'll talk specifically about that. The other thing is that as we move into contact tracing, isolation, and quarantine, that we'll be going back to an area where we're asking people who have been exposed to COVID, if they're sick, to isolate, and if they're a contact, that they will need to quarantine. Okay. I printed face back to front, so saving paper. So community reopening principles. So our principles really probably aren't going to be very surprising, but really this is about saving lives and mitigating the impacts of COVID-19. It is shared leadership with our community-based organizations and our cities. We will continue to put equity up front and make sure that as we're making decisions and changing priorities, that we ask, what are the potential unintended consequences, and what are the consequences to different populations within our community. And as always, it will be a science-based approach. So another section of our plan will include our communication strategies. This will include a comprehensive plan that includes message development and dissemination via a lot of different vehicles. So earned media, paid ads on TV, radio, always English, Spanish, and other languages as appropriate. Social media, both free and paid social media, direct community outreach. And we're really looking at contracting with media and communication companies, as well as some of our community-based organizations to help with the outreach to some of our underserved communities. And then finally, we will continue to update our COVID-19 website. Next slide. So another section of our plan will focus on coordination of recovery funding. The County Administrative Office has convened a work group that includes some Board of Commissioner members, some staff, and really are looking at some of our funding opportunities like the CARES Fund. And first, to cover, of course, our county costs. It's important that county government remains strong and healthy, and then look at what our community-wide response costs are. County Emergency Management is serving as the coordinating office for the information on all of the state, federal, and other loan or government programs. Okay. So the rest of this presentation, I'm going to just quickly provide an overview of the key initiatives that will be covered in the plan. So I'm going to just go through each of these, hopefully pretty quickly. And of course, ask questions at any time. So next slide. So beginning with our Washington County government. So this is Washington County government as an employer. It is this part of the plan. There's a separate county employer plan, and it is led by county administration, and really they're focused on keeping staff safe, so providing guidance, whether it's about telecommuting, workplace safety, all of the leave that we've had, all of our changes in policies. So it's about keeping staff safe, ensuring that there's community engagement, so things like having the availability of these kind of Zoom calls for Board of Commissioner meetings and some of our community-based meetings and commissions and advisory councils. And then also assuring that we're meeting the community's essential needs so that our business practices as much as possible are moving forward. And then there will be some focus in this plan on key public services, so local law enforcement and the Law Enforcement Coordinating Council, support for libraries and elections. Okay. So public health, and we've talked quite a bit about this, but the focus will be on case investigation. We will continue, as we do now, to interview each each case that's defined by a positive COVID test, as well as presumptive positives. And so that is somebody that has been exposed to a confirmed positive case and is showing symptoms of COVID. So we will interview those as well. Contact tracing, we've talked quite a bit about. Isolation and quarantine, so we'll need to have spaces and all the supports that go around, including ensuring that people can meet their basic daily living needs if they are put into isolation or quarantine. So I think this graphic, we've had a lot of questions about what is the number of contact tracers that we need. And based on our current case investigations and what we're seeing nationally, just to give you an idea, when we interview one case, it can result in 12 symptomatic people. So that, remember, symptomatic means that we classify them as presumptive, so we treat them just like a case, which means now we have to interview all 12 of them as if they're a case. And then it will also generate an average of 17 people that need monitoring. So, and then you can imagine, and I didn't bring you lots of slides, but you can imagine those 12 presumptive, that each of them will also generate another 8, 10, 12 presumptive cases. So you can see how this can escalate into such a big job for contact tracing. Okay. So moving on, we will have a section on business and economic recovery. And you can see that the components for that are the Economic Recovery and Assistance Program, so working really closely with the county administrative group that's been working on that. Also, just providing coordination and support. There's a lot of questions, lots of technical assistance that needs to happen, and just a lot of communication with all of our businesses. Disease control technical assistance specifically that we'll need to provide, and then enforcement of any rules or regulations that come out as a result of the governor's reopening plan. The sectors that we have current guidance for, and this is not necessarily final guidance, but we're using it to help draft this plan. You can see childcare, restaurants and bars, retail, outdoor recreation, personal services, transit, and I also called out for small businesses because there's some general guidance for all employers that will be helpful, I think, to some of our small businesses in particular. Okay. So community services, so this is really the part of the branch of the EOC that has been really focused on what do our underserved populations need, and we have some specific high priority populations that we've been working with and we will continue to work with. So those are homeless populations. You've heard a lot about agricultural populations and migrant farm workers and our communities of color who we know have been disproportionately impacted. So that's ensuring that we have enhanced bicultural, bilingual communication in everything that we do, from our communication work to outreach to our disease investigation, contact tracing, and then continuing to work with and support our local community-based organizations. We are reaching out to them. We have been all along. We've had those calls every other week, and we are reaching out to them specifically now to help prepare them for some of these reopening guidances, and also to ask them to consider working with us through contracts to support the contact tracing, outreach, and communication plans. And then specific outreach to small businesses, women-owned, and minority-owned businesses.
Do we have a definition of a small business? I know at the federal level for the first CARES, it was 500 employees. Do we have a number that we use to?
I believe there is, but I don't know it off the top of my head.
25.
Was it 25?
25, thank you.
That was my recollection, thanks.
Yes. Okay, so the other component that will be required to work on in this reopening plan is our medical system of care. And that is really about a lot of communication, support, and mitigation to impact. So it's continuing to distribute personal protective equipment, continuing to make sure that folks are getting the guidance through our health alert network and contacts with hospitals, long-term care, a lot of guidance to our emergency medical services, and then other medical, dental, and behavioral health practices. Okay, and then the last section is long-term recovery section, and so that's really about what do we need to have in place for long-term recovery and resilience, and that is going to require a lot of regional coordination, making sure that we're on top of recovering those county costs, and that we're connecting businesses and individuals with different assistance programs, because it's not going to end in phase 1 or phase 2. So that's an overview of the plan. Next slide. So our hope is that we'll get you this plan to review by May 8th, and that we will have a conversation on May 12th and possibly consider any changes or adoption. So today, just with this high-level direction or high-level overview of the plan, just wanted to get some feel for whether you, and I don't need it right this minute, but over time to think about, are we headed in the right direction with this plan? Are there, was there something glaring right off the top of your head that you think was missing, and you're like, well, why didn't you review this in the plan? And I guess just some verification that we do intend to stay aligned regionally.
So these are great questions, and we look forward to going over them in the work session when we have the opportunity of this framework information and board discussion.
Great, thank you.
One quick question. I thought on several slides back you were talking about a PPE inventory.
Yes.
Did I see that correctly? It kind of zoomed by me there. Do you have an idea of what a PPE inventory for the county would look like if we're looking out into the future on some of this?
So the Health Preparedness Organization, which is a regional organization through OHA, distributes PPE to hospitals and health systems, and the EOC distributes the PPE to everybody else, so EMS, fire, law enforcement, behavioral health organizations, and there is a prioritization that's been created based on OHA, Oregon Health Authority guidance. And so we do get information now on daily burn rates. So in other words, how many they're using as we give them out every day. We're working in particular on some of these other health and medical, so the dental clinics and the behavioral health clinics, because those clinics have been closed. And as they reopen, we're working to determine what is the need for those types of clinics.
Yeah, I think where I was going was meeting the needs of today and then looking out into possibly fall. Maybe the demand mitigates a little bit during the summer and things like that. Then if we would have a kind of a resurgence in the fall or in the winter, we would have some inventory stored up, and we have been talking about what does that look like, what kinds of PPE, and certainly numbers, storage capabilities, all those kinds of things. So maybe if we could have that conversation.
Yeah, so there, the guidance from the prerequisite is recommending that the health systems have regionally a 30-day supply. I don't know exactly what that number is. I know that the health systems and the EOCs regionally are working on, well, what is that number for our region? Is
Okay.
that?
Yeah, that's good enough for right now, certainly. Sure. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other?
All right, so here in Washington County, we had the first reported case, which also happened to be the first reported case in the state of Oregon. And given the journey of this new virus, we right away were concerned about our community members and ensuring that folks were not stigmatized by the existence of this unwanted guest in our community. Towards that end, we've taken different efforts to ensure that our community members know that we stand for equity and inclusion. So today, I and my 4 colleagues on the board will be reading a statement on equity and inclusion. So, in late February of this year, this Washington County Board of Commissioners unanimously approved. I'm going to pause because we're supposed to be projecting this statement for our public at the same time. Okay, so I'll start from the beginning again. Okay, so in late February of this year, this Washington County Board of Commissioners unanimously approved the adoption of a historic resolution on diversity, equity, and inclusion to guide the county's efforts to advance racial equity and create a more inclusive community for all. It stated clearly and unequivocally that Washington County promotes and values the principles of equity, fairness, and social justice in relation to and across intersections of age, race, color, disability, faith, gender, and other identities represented amongst our diverse community. Next slide. The work of diversity, equity, and inclusion at Washington County is all the more critical amid the COVID-19 crisis. Our community and the data remind us that the effects of COVID-19 are not distributed equitably across our community. As
Washington County leadership, we stand in solidarity with employees and our diverse communities that have experienced rising incidents of racism, threats, and hate crimes. We are deeply concerned about the disproportionate impact of the crisis on our community members of color and groups impacted by inequities. Communities of color and other groups that have been historically marginalized often experience poorer health outcomes and therefore are at higher risk for medical complications and death due to COVID-19. Washington County holds equity at the very center of our response to COVID-19 and will continue to lead with race as we support our entire community through this crisis.
Additionally, we know that this virus has affected our community in different ways. For some, it means having to work from home or not being able to go on a planned vacation. But for others in our community, they were left suddenly wondering how to pay their bills or where their family's next meal was coming from. On top of these very real concerns for their basic needs, many communities are experiencing stigmatization, racism associated with the virus, causing extra stress and in some cases even experiencing threats to their lives.
We want the community to know that our Health and Human Services Department, as well as our emergency responders, are working closely with community members every single day to provide care and contain the virus. We were first county in the state to assign an equity officer and an equity team to our Emergency Operations Center to provide additional expertise and support. Our equity team, along with Emergency Operations Center leadership, continues to identify, anticipate, and recommend communication strategies to reach disproportionately impacted groups and to provide strategies for mitigating inequitable impacts within our community.
If there's anything COVID-19 is showing us, it's that we're all much more dependent on one another than we might have thought. Going forward, we consider this a learning opportunity of how we can foster inclusion and fairness to our workplace and throughout our community. As neighbors, we are better when we support each other and when we work to support both our families and our community. We are always stronger when we work together. In times of crisis like this, we are experiencing right now, we are reminded of this.
Thank you, colleagues. I really appreciate the work that our staff is doing through the Washington County Emergency Operations Center and all of our experts in public health for helping us ensure that we are making public health informed decisions on behalf of our community. I want to thank our community members for taking such unprecedented, aggressive action so that we would flatten the predicted curve of the impact of COVID-19 in our community. Hang in there. Now is not the time to let our guard down. We need to keep adhering to stay home, save lives for another few weeks. I know you can do it. You're doing great. But we need to make sure we have our plans in place, our surge response in order so that we can reopen with as little risk as possible. Because after all, the worst impact of this virus is death. And we don't want any members of our community to suffer, let alone die. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Harrington and Board. That gave me chills. I appreciate you raising this important equity issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
So we'll move back to our agenda. The next section of our agenda is proclamations. And today we are blessed to have 4 different proclamations. The first one is a proclamation in honor of Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I would ask Kathy Jacoby, our meeting clerk today, to please read that proclamation.
Okay. A proclamation in honor of Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Whereas Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month is celebrated each May to commemorate the many contributions of Asian and Pacific Island Americans which have shaped our country. And whereas Asian and Pacific Islander Americans represent very diverse ethnic groups, including all those who've immigrated to the United States themselves or whose ancestors originated from the continent of Asia and the numerous Pacific islands known as Melanesia, Micronesia, Polynesia. And whereas generation after generation, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have courageously reached for their hopes and dreams and forged a proud legacy that reflects the spirit of our nation, often in the face of severe racial bias and discrimination. And whereas the triumphs, perseverance, and achievements of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have enhanced and shaped our national character with centuries-old traditions that reflect the multicultural customs of their communities. And whereas Asian and Pacific Islanders have played a significant role in our local history and the community fabric of Washington County with enormous contributions to science, education, agriculture, government, commerce, the arts, and many other fields of endeavor. And whereas the theme for this year's observance is Unite Our Nation by Empowering Equality. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on this 5th day of May 2020, the Washington County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim May 2020 as Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, encouraging all residents of Washington County to share in this special tribute by learning about and celebrating the generations of Asian and Pacific Islanders who continue to enrich our nation and our local community.
So moved.
We have a motion to adopt today's proclamation. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Us
Please
too.
vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously 5-0. Our next proclamation.
On behalf of my two granddaughters, Olivia and Addison, I'd like to thank the Commission for this proclamation. They are of Pacific Islander heritage, so it's very important to me, and I want to say thank you.
Thank you. The next proclamation is to proclaim May 2020 as Older Americans Month in Washington County.
Good morning, Chair Harrington, Commissioners. I'm Rebecca Miller, Supervisor for Disability, Aging, and Veterans Services. It's my pleasure to request that this board designate May as Older Americans Month to honor older Americans and celebrate their contributions to our community. Disability, Aging, and Veterans Services, as Washington County's area agency on aging, delivers programs and services that keep clients safe and independent in their home. We provide timely and dependable information and assistance, provide one-on-one support and assistance to those in need, and much more. We continue to flex our services to meet the changing needs of our community and really appreciate the strength and resilience we have seen demonstrated every day by the older adults with which we interact. Now more than ever, the time, experience, and talents of older adults are benefiting family, peers, and their neighbors. Communities, organizations, and individuals of all ages, sorry, I can't see through tears, excuse me, are making their marks. So one example comes from our friends at Meals on Wheels people, who on a typical time, their average volunteer age ranges 66 to 75. And over 10% of those volunteers have served for more than 11 years. Since COVID-19, though, we know that older adults have had to ramp back their volunteerism, and they've also started requesting telephone reassurance. More than 500 older adult clients have asked to receive regular phone calls from their regular, in addition to their regular service. We've seen requests for home-delivered meals skyrocket. So older adults are both on the giving and receiving ends of this COVID-19 crisis. And that's just one example of many. So while we know that older adults are deeply impacted by COVID-19, Older Americans Month gives us the golden opportunity to celebrate the ways that older adults contribute to the community in times both ordinary and, like today, extraordinary times. So this year's theme of Make Your Mark highlights the difference everyone can make in the lives of older adults, in support of caregivers, and to strengthen communities, and of course, the difference older adults are making every day themselves. So I'm pleased to have with me three guests on the phone, Bob Ludlam and Sephirina De Leon Dale are there. Sephirina's, I think, somewhere out there. And they're both current Aging and Veteran Services Advisory Council members. And Yavenko has applied, and you'll see his application later this month. So these folks really exemplify civic engagement and partnership and support, and they'll be reading the proclamation to you today in English, Russian, and Spanish as a way to highlight the diverse voices and experiences of older adults in Washington County. And I really just want to thank you all for being on the phone and making yourself available. So it's going to be a little technical fun here. So I think what we're going to proclaim Older Americans Month, and Bob's going to read in English and then Yugoslav and Russian the first half, and then we'll move to the second half of the proclamation with Bob again and then Seferina. So take it away.
Thank you, Rebecca. Whereas Washington County includes over 100,000 older Americans with nearly 1 in 5 people 60 and over, more than 14% from communities of color, making economic, cultural, and countless other contributions to our community every day. And whereas Washington County Disability, Aging, and Veteran Services is committed to helping all individuals live longer, healthier lives, and to supporting the physical, mental, social, and emotional well-being of its older residents. And whereas Washington County is stronger when people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds are included and participate as fully engaged members of their community through employment, volunteerism, social engagement, and activities. And whereas Washington County recognizes older adults are more severely impacted by the global COVID-19 pandemic, but are also a significant part of response and recovery effort.
And now it's your turn, Yaroslav, in Russian, please.
Принимая во внимание, что в округе Вашингтон насчитывается более 100 тысяч пожилых американцев, причем почти каждый 5-й человек в возрасте 60 лет и старше, и более 14% из цветных общин, и они вносят экономический, культурный и другой бесчисленный вклад в наше сообщество каждый день, а также принимая во внимание, что служба по делам инвалидов, пожилых людей и ветеранов округа Вашингтон стремится помочь всем людям жить дольше, вести более здоровый образ жизни и также поддерживать физическое, психическое, социальное и эмоциональное благополучие своих пожилых жителей, а также принимая во внимание, что округ Вашингтон сильнее, когда в него вовлечены люди всех возрастов, способностей и происхождения, которые участвуют в качестве полностью вовлеченных членов своей общины посредством трудоустройства, волонтерства или социальных обязательств, а также принимая во внимание, что округ Вашингтон признает, что пожилые люди наиболее сильно пострадали от глобальной пандемии COVID-19, но они также являются важной частью усилий по реагированию и восстановлению.
Thank you. And back to you, Bob.
Whereas Make Your Mark is the theme of this year's Older American Month, older adults in Washington County are rising to that challenge in important and creative ways. Locally, they are giving hands-on care to sick family members, providing child care for essential workers, volunteering to deliver food to homebound people, sewing cloth face coverings for the community, providing yoga classes online, leading virtual sing-alongs through local senior centers, recording and sharing their stories of hope and resilience. And whereas we can highlight the significant efforts of community-based organizations to address health disparities that compound as we age. such as Centro Cultural Edad de Oro program and their new project, where elders will be receive athletic shoes and weekly check-ins to encourage safe exercise and well-being.
There's one more bullet. Can Bob, I'll read it. Whereas the common issues facing older adults of isolation, depression, and anxiety have been exacerbated and highlighted through this current crisis of COVID-19, and innovative programs like Oregon Senior Peer Outreach, where older adult peers provide weekly telephone support to older adults facing these issues, have made a difference for many. Okay, Severina.
Thank you, Rebecca. Mientras que la huella del tema es deje su huella para el mes de edad con las personas de tercera edad, adultos mayores en el condado de Washington están haciendo frente al desfase de manera creativa y con presente. A nivel local, brindan atención práctica a los miembros de la familia enfermos, brindan cuidado infantil a los trabajadores esenciales, se ofrecen como voluntarios para entregar alimentos a las personas confiadas a su hogar, cosen cubiertos de tela para el hogar, comunidad, brindando clases de yoga en línea, dirigiendo canciones virtuales a través de centros de adultos mayores de cuando y comparten la historia y esperanza y resistencia. Mientras que podemos descifrar los significados esfuerzos de las organizaciones basadas en la comunidad para abordar las desigualdades de salud que agravan a medida de envejeciendo, como el Centro Cultural, el Programa de Oro y el Programa de Edad de Oro y su nuevo proyecto en que los ancianos reciben zapatos atípicos en registrarse semanal para un programa de ejercicio para asegurar su bienestar. Y por cuanto, mientras los problemas comunes que enfrentan a los adultos mayores de hacinamiento, depresión y ansiedad se han exacerbado y resultado a través de la crisis actual de COVID-19. Un programa innovador como Oregon Senior Peer Outreach, donde los adultos mayores brindan apoyo telefónico semanal a los adultos mayores que enfrentan estos temas, han marcado la diferencia para muchos. Gracias.
Thank you.
Now, therefore, be it resolved that on this 5th day of May 2020, the Washington County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim May as the Older Americans Month in Washington County. We urge every resident to recognize older adults for the vast contributions they make each day and in every sector of our community, and for bringing awareness of the unique challenges older adults face and continue to adapt and overcome.
Do we have a motion?
Move to accept this proclamation.
Second.
Thank you very much to our presenters. That was very special. All those in favor of adopting this motion to proclaim May 5th, to proclaim on this day, May 5th of 2020, for the month of May as Older Americans Month, please vote by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously 5-0. And thank you again for our community members for reading this proclamation. It was wonderful to have.
Thank you.
Thank
Nice
you,
job,
Rebecca
Rebecca.
and Commissioner Willie, for helping to arrange that. It was really special.
Yeah. This proclamation also brought back some memories for me. Some of my most useful and fruitful time I spent on the board was my years as the board's representative on the Disability Aging and Veteran Services Commission. So.
Thank you for sharing that. I look forward to having that opportunity in the years to come myself. We'll move on now. There are two different proclamations from our Land Use and Transportation Department. The first one is a joint proclamation with Clean Water Services. So we have our two different key staff members Stephen Roberts, who is the Director of Land Use and Transportation, as well as Mark Jockers from Clean Water Services, and we have a staff member who's joining us here on Zoom as well. I have to remark that this is a very special way to do these proclamations.
Yeah, it's great. We appreciate this. So I'm going to kick us off, and then I'll turn to Mark for a bit, too. I just want to let you know that the American Public Works Association is hosting its annual National Public Works Week, and this week it's May 17th through 23rd. So the theme this year is the rhythm of public works. So I think you can imagine this year it's been a little more like free jazz. There's not been a real consistent, predictable rhythm, but we're moving forward nonetheless. I know our colleagues at Clean Water Services are feeling the same thing. We come before the board each year at this time, and we do this proclamation, and we are doing it to help raise awareness amongst yourselves, but also our community about the importance of public works. And we also like to let folks know about our annual Public Works Fair, which we normally would be holding on May 16th. Of course, given the current situation with COVID-19, we worked with our partners, and we all opted to, of course, cancel that event. So we'll hopefully be back next year as usual. And so we always, however, want to use this opportunity to celebrate our public works staff and obviously both LUT, Clean Water Services, and we have a number of other partner agencies here in the community that we all work with regularly. So just in LUT, we have transportation planners, surveyors, engineers, technicians, project managers, inspectors, road crew members, and a whole number of administrative and support staff that really help to keep us moving forward, providing those critical services for our community. Ours are mostly transportation related, of course. So we're always striving to obviously keep our roadways safe and in good condition, and we're improving them as funding allows. So as we've heard a lot lately, we know that not all heroes wear capes. We like to think that some of ours also wear hard hats and orange vests too. So as I mentioned, so LUT is just one of the local public works agencies that's active in Washington County. Of course, Clean Water Services is here with us. A couple of other partners that we work with quite a lot are Willamette Water Supply System, the Tualatin Valley Water District, Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District, all of our cities in Washington County, the Oregon Department of Transportation, and many others. So I'm just going to turn it over to Mark to see if he has any comments he'd like to make before we get to the proclamation.
Good. Thank you very much, Stephen. And I want to, on behalf of the 370 employees of Clean Water Services, wanted to thank the board and the community for recognizing the work that we do. As Stephen said, we are part of that essential workforce, and our employees are showing up to work every day as we go through this very difficult time we're in. We work in partnership with the community to safeguard the Tualatin River and safeguard the Tualatin River's health and vitality, as well as ensure the economic vitality of the region and protect public health for about 600,000 customers. Our employees are very proud of the work that they do to protect public health and the environment by providing these essential lifeline services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, year-round. We work very closely with City Public Works agencies to maintain more than 2,000 miles of sanitary sewer line and about 1,500 miles of storm line to protect the Tualatin River. Our lab staff do more than 150,000 tests a year to monitor the river and the health of our waterways. And our 4 water resource recovery facilities, which operate 24/7, clean more than 65 million gallons of water a day before returning it to the Tualatin River. Our focus is on protecting public health and the environment for our customers and our community, and we deeply appreciate the opportunity to be recognized for that work. We have had this partnership with Washington County LUT to mark Public Works Week for probably close to 20 years, and it is terrific. We work very close together, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
And I know we have a staff member here with us to read today's proclamation. Do we also have a video?
We do. Actually, we have 2 videos. We have an LUT video, and Clean Water Services has one as well. So would you like to read the proclamation now?
Whatever order works well for
Okay, well, why don't we do that? So I'm happy to say that we have Monica Soto Valencia here from our Road Operations and Maintenance Division, and she's actually going to read the proclamation for us both in Spanish and in English.
Yes, hello. Alrighty, so let's begin with it in English. Proclamation, Board of Commissioners for Washington County and Board of Directors for Clean Water Services, National Public Works Week, May 17th through 23rd, 2020. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Washington County. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our community. And whereas it is in the public interest for the members of the community, civic leaders, and children in Washington County to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities, and whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff public works departments is materially influenced by the people's attitude and understanding of the importance of the work they perform, which is further highlighted during the current coronavirus pandemic. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on this 5th day of May 2020, the Washington County Board of Commissioners, also acting as the Board of Directors for Clean Water Services, does hereby proclaim the week of May 17th through 23rd, 2020 as National Public Works Week in Washington County, and we call upon all citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works and to recognize the contributions which public works officials make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life, given under our hands and seal of the county this 5th day, May 2020. Now I'm going to read it in Spanish. All right. Proclamación. Junta de Comisionados para el Condado de Washington y Junta Directiva de Clean Water Services, Servicio de Aguas Limpias. Semana Nacional de Obras Públicas, mayo 17 a 23 de 2020. Por cuanto los profesionales de obras públicas se centran en la infraestructura, las instalaciones y los servicios que son de vital importancia para las comunidades sostenibles y resistentes y para la salud pública, la alta calidad de vida y el bienestar de la gente del condado de Washington, y por cuanto esa infraestructura, instalaciones y servicios no podrían proporcionarse sin los esfuerzos dedicados de los profesionales de obras públicas, que son ingenieros, gerentes y empleados en todos los niveles del gobierno y el sector privado, que son responsables de reconstruir, mejorar y proteger nuestro transporte, suministro de agua, tratamiento de agua y sistema de desechos sólidos, edificios públicos y otras estructuras e instalaciones esenciales para nuestra comunidad, y por cuanto es de interés público para los miembros de la comunidad, los líderes cívicos y los niños en el condado de Washington, obtener conocimiento y mantener un interés progresivo y comprensión de la importancia de las obras públicas y los programas de obras públicas en sus respectivas comunidades, y por cuanto la eficiencia del personal calificado y dedicado que trabaja en departamentos de obras públicas está materialmente influenciada por la actitud y la comprensión de la gente sobre la importancia del trabajo que realizan, lo que se destaca aún más durante la actual pandemia del coronavirus. Desde ahora, por lo tanto, se resuelve que en este 5º día de mayo de 2020, la Junta de Comisionados del Condado de Washington, que también actúa como la Junta de Directores de Clean Water Services, Servicios de Aguas Limpias, proclama la semana del 17 al 23 de mayo de 2020 como Semana Nacional de Obras Públicas. en el condado de Washington y hacemos un llamado a todos los ciudadanos y organizaciones cívicas para que se familiaricen con las dificultades relacionadas con el suministro de nuestras obras públicas y que reconozcan las contribuciones que los funcionarios de obras públicas hacen todos los días a nuestra salud, seguridad, comodidad y calidad de vida. Dado bajo nuestras manos y el sello del condado este 5º día de mayo de 2020.
Thank you, Ms. Soto.
You're welcome.
So, do we have a motion to adopt this proclamation?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of declaring May 17th through the 23rd, 2020 as National Public Works Week, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now we'll move on
Do we
to
want
our...
to do our videos or?
Ooh, sorry, that's right, videos. Thank you.
Certainly. These are both fairly brief.
Yeah. 1 minute video.
Nice job.
Nice, yeah, both.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers and...
Thank you.
Excuse me. Roberts and Mr. Jockers for highlighting the great work of the employees of the two departments that are part of Public Works here in the Agency of Washington County and Clean Water Services. And I would just like to add that all of the logistics of this meeting and sharing these 4 proclamations with our community demonstrates yet again how nimble our agency is and how dedicated each and every one of our employees are. Thank you for the great work that you do each and every day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for proclamations today.
Still have one more.
Oh, I forgot the last one. See, I got so involved with those videos. Now, to proclaim May 2020 as National Building Safety Month in Washington County.
All right, thank you again. So the International Code Council's Building Safety Month is also celebrated in May each year to raise awareness about critical safety issues and the importance of strong building codes, as well as strong building permit and inspection programs. This year's theme is Safer Buildings, Safer Communities, Safer World. Our building services staff certainly embody that theme, particularly these past few months, as many have continued to provide essential services that are critical to keeping the construction and housing sectors of our economy going. Our staff are working, whether it's from home, in the field, or in the office, to continue serving our customers and our community. So I'm pleased to have with us today David Gerlach, one of our building inspectors, and David's going to read the Building Safety Month proclamation, also in both Spanish and English, and then we also have a brief video to share on this proclamation too.
Take it away, David.
Good morning. The proclamation in English. Proclamation, Board of Commissioners for Washington County, National Building Safety Month, May 2020. Whereas Washington County is committed to recognizing that our growth and strength depends on the safety and economic value of the homes, building, and infrastructure that serve our community, both in everyday life and in times of natural disaster. And whereas our confidence in the structural integrity of these buildings that make up our community is achieved through the devotion of diligent guardians, building safety and fire protection officials, architects, engineers, builders, tradespeople, design individuals, laborers, plumbers, and others in the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings. And whereas National Building Safety Month reminds the public about the critical role served by the community's largely unknown guardians of public safety, our local code officials, who assure safe, efficient, and livable buildings. And whereas safer buildings, safer communities, safer world, the theme for Building Safety Month 2020, encourages all to raise awareness of the importance of preparing for disasters, water safety, technological transformation in building safety, and training for the next generations. Building Safety Month 2020 encourages appropriate steps everyone can take to ensure the safety of our built environment and recognizes that the implementation of safety codes by local and state agencies has saved lives and protected homes and businesses. And whereas each year in observance of Building Safety Month, we are asked to consider the commitment to improve building safety and economic investment at home and in the community, and to acknowledge the essential services provided to all of us by local and state building departments, fire prevention bureaus, and federal agencies in protecting lives and property. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on this 5th day of May 2020, the Washington County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim May 2020 as National Building Safety Month in Washington County, and we call upon all residents, businesses, and civic organizations to take steps to ensure the places where we live, learn, work, worship, and play are safe and sustainable, and to recognize that countless lives have been saved due to the implementation of safety codes by local and state agencies. And now I read it in Spanish. Proclamación, Junta de Comisionados del Condado de Washington, Mes Nacional de Seguridad en la Construcción, mayo 2020. Considerando que el Condado de Washington se compromete a reconocer que nuestro crecimiento y fortaleza depende de la seguridad y el valor económico de las viviendas, edificios e infraestructura que sirvan a nuestra comunidad, tanto en la vida cotidiana como en tiempos de desastres naturales, y considerando que nuestra confianza en la integridad estructural de estos edificios que conforman nuestra comunidad se logra a través de la devoción de guardianes vigilantes funcionarios de seguridad de edificios y prevención de incendios, arquitectos, ingenieros, constructores, comerciantes, profesionales del diseño, obreros, plomeros y otros en la industria de la construcción que trabajan durante todo el año para garantizar la construcción segura de edificios, y considerando que el mes nacional de la seguridad en la construcción recuerda al público acerca del papel crítico que cumplen los guardianes de la seguridad pública, en gran parte desconocidos por la comunidad, nuestros funcionarios del código local, que nos garantizan edificios seguros, eficientes y habitables. Y considerando que edificios más seguros, comunidades más seguras, mundo más seguro, el tema del mes de la seguridad en la construcción 2020 anima a todos a crear conciencia sobre la importancia de prepararse para desastres, seguridad del agua, transformación tecnológica en la seguridad de los edificios y capacitación para la próxima generación. El mes de la seguridad en la construcción 2020 anima a todos a tomar los pasos apropiados para la seguridad de nuestro entorno construido y reconoce que la implementación de códigos de seguridad por medio de agencias locales y estatales ha salvado vidas y protegido hogares y negocios. Y considerando que cada año, en observación del mes de la seguridad en la construcción, se nos pide que consideremos el compromiso de mejorar la seguridad en la construcción y la inversión económica en el lugar y en la comunidad, y que reconozcamos el servicio esencial que nos brindan a todos los departamentos de construcción locales y estatales, oficinas de prevención de incendios y agencias federales para proteger vidas y propiedades. Desde ahora, por lo tanto, se resuelve que en este 5º día de mayo de 2020, la Junta de Comisionados del Condado de Washington proclama mayo de 2020 como Mes Nacional de Seguridad en la Construcción en el Condado de Washington, y hacemos un llamado a todos los residentes, empresas y organizaciones cívicas para que tomen medidas para garantizar que los lugares donde vivimos, aprendemos, trabajamos, adoramos y jugamos sean seguros y sostenibles, y que reconocen que se han salvado innumerables vidas debido a la implementación de códigos de seguridad por parte de las agencias locales y estatales. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gerlach. And a video?
Yes, we do have a quick video. Back to the team here.
So what are the wishes of the commission?
Move for the requested action.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to proclaim May 2020 as National Building Safety Month. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously, 5-0.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. And that's it for proclamations today. Next, we'll move on to board and commissions. And today we have a new member of our community to be appointed to the County Budget Committee. This would be to appoint Jennifer Berghart to the Washington County Budget Committee, as well as the Service District for Lighting Number 1 Budget Committee for a term ending June 30th of 2022.
Madam Chair, I move for the department's requested action.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you. Next, we're going to move to public hearings. We have 2 different ones today. I think these are our first public hearings via Zoom? No?
We've had one.
We had one last week. Okay. Well, today we have a public hearing, to adopt an emergency ordinance number 863, amending the emergency code. Do we have a motion to read this ordinance by title only?
I move that we read by title only.
We have a motion and a second.
Second.
All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Mr. Rapplier, please.
Ordinance number 863, an emergency ordinance amending the Emergency Services Chapter 8.36.030 to allow extending an emergency declaration for 30 days. And if I could give a staff report on this at this point?
Yes, please.
And with your indulgence, I'll also combine that with the staff report on the action item, which is to adopt extension of the emergency declaration. So what we're proposing today is this amendment to the emergency code, and it's a very simple amendment, and I've handed out sort of a strike-through version earlier at your work session. So our emergency code provides that emergency declarations can be allowed for up to 14 days. If we had been back, I think this will be the 5th time to extend that in order to conserve resources. We are amending that section to allow them to be extended up to 30 days. So and this one, we are proposing to follow this with an extension to June 2nd, so that it gives us some time so we don't have to come back so frequently. So this is an emergency ordinance, so the procedure is a little bit different. Your typical ordinance is you have a first reading, and then 14 days later you have a second reading, and then a public hearing, and then adoption. Through the emergency procedures process, we're allowed to have the first reading, which we just did, and then we follow it immediately with the public hearing, and then you have the roll call vote, and this ordinance can be effective immediately. So that leads us to the action item, which is a little bit later on your agenda, where you allow the extension of the emergency ordinance, the emergency declaration, up to June 2nd. So, what does our emergency declaration do? And you've seen these a number of times, and they're relatively limited. First limitation is that they apply to the unincorporated areas of Washington County, so they do not apply within inside cities. And so what we've done is ask for assistance from the state and federal government to help us during this emergency. The emergency process for goods and services are amended so we can quickly provide those services without some of the standard, more lengthy protocols. And we've also recently delegated authority to the CEO to purchase up to $500,000. And this declaration does one more additional item. And this came to us from our Land Use and Transportation Department. The utility companies were needing to work in our right-of-ways, and the permit process was a bit cumbersome because of the emergency and the lack of staff that are able to attend. So it delegates, this declaration delegates to the Director of Land Use and Transportation the ability to suspend some of the rules and permitting process of an ORNO 77-76 that's been around since 1977 to allow critical work by utilities in our right-of-way. So it sort of speeds that up and gets that done. So, and that, again, it directs it to the director to make sure that's done in the proper fashion. So, what does it not do? And so, we have been following the direction from the governor on the primary responses to this emergency. So our emergency declaration does not impose social distancing, does not close businesses, does not shut schools, does not issue stay-at-home orders. Again, we are only following the governor's directions to save home and save lives, but the emergency declaration doesn't do any of those things. So, and we have no ability legally to do anything different than the governor says. You know, we're if we have to follow the Constitution, and then we are, you know, beholden to the state government and the governor on these declarations. So if with that, there's any questions about it, I would recommend if you open it up to a public hearing.
So at this time, we'll open a public hearing on this ordinance, emergency ordinance to adopt Code Section 863, specifically Section 8.36.030 sub B sub 3 to change one word from 14 to 30. So right now we're going to open a public hearing. Do we have anyone signed up to speak during this?
We do not.
We do not?
No.
Okay. Is there anyone here in our room? No one electronically on Zoom? No one here in the room? So we'll close today's public hearing.
Madam Chair, having conducted our first reading, followed with a public hearing, which is now concluded, I move that we adopt ordinance 863 to be effective immediately.
And we'll be doing so through a roll call vote.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Comment.
Yes, Commissioner Rogers.
A quick comment. I will be supporting the motion, but I, like everyone else probably on this board and our staff, is receiving countless phone calls of folks who are concerned about the economy. And as a small business person myself, I understand your concerns. My heart goes out to you. You put your blood, sweat, tear, treasury, all of those plans that you have spent late hours trying to accomplish things. We understand that that's hard, and we understand that it's very difficult. And so I would lend my voice, and I hope the board does, as well as others, to asking the governor to proceed with caution, but start to dial a little bit up the reopening of the economy. It's important. We have people out there who are literally losing their businesses, but that doesn't mean that we should not adopt this. It's important. We need to be safe, and so I'm fully supportive.
Excuse me, like you, Commissioner Rogers, we as elected members of the Board of Commission have had the opportunity to participate in multiple conference calls with Governor Brown and her staff regarding this very unwelcome emergency of the presence of this new coronavirus known as COVID-19. As you very efficiently, as you put it, this emergency order enables us to efficiently use resources in response to this emergency. So our declaring an emergency for the unincorporated areas, that would be the unincorporated urban neighborhoods as well as our rural community, allows us to capture resources, put in place policies and procedures to respond to this public health emergency and to comply with state and federal requirements. Are there any other comments from commission members today? Could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Treese?
Aye.
Commissioner Willie?
Aye.
Commissioner Rogers?
Aye.
Vice Chair Scouten?
Aye.
Chair Harrington?
Aye. The ordinance passes unanimously 5-0. I do have a question on the applying this. So do you want to do that resolution in order now?
Sure. If I would move for adoption of the R&Os, at least for discussion.
So later in our agenda
Oh, okay. Don't we need a second so we can discuss it?
yes, we do.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Later on in our agenda, we have a resolution and order. So that's what we have just moved to. We have a motion and a second now on the table. The resolution and order is to declare an emergency under these recently adopted or just adopted provisions through our code modification. The one thing that I wanted to get clarification on, our packet did not include any link to Resolution 77-76. And our website doesn't have such public access to such resolutions. And that section was not highlighted to us in the written staff report. So other than seeing the different date in this resolution and order, I did not, as I prepared for this meeting, did not see that section change. But it has been brought to our attention right here in this meeting, not in work session. So I just wanted to ask about the resolution and order 77-76. So clearly it's been in place for 4 decades. And so I'm just wondering further information about what are the particular provisions about the right-of-way? And does this make it clear what specific use is envisioned as you've highlighted, Mr. Rapplier, or does it give the director discretion to waive all right of use for all uses during an emergency?
Madam Chair, members of the board, no, it's only limited to utilities that are providing essential services. So then RNO 77-76 is the RNO that governs permitting for uses in our right-of-way, and it has some very detailed descriptions of what you can and cannot do, what the engineering designs will be, and how you get permits. And so this just provides an ability for, the language exactly is that the director of the Land Use and Transportation or his designee is authorized to take such actions and issue necessary authorizations that it is in the best interest of the public for the use and protection of the public roadway and the traveling public, and to allow utilities as described in RNO 77-76 to conduct work on existing essential critical infrastructure.
Okay.
So it's only for those utilities and only for critical infrastructure.
Yeah, and not for new as well. Okay, thank you very much for highlighting that. I appreciate it.
And this issue did come up after the submittal of the board packet.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Are there any other than mine, are there any other board questions or comments at this time? So it's a resolution and order, so we can adopt it by voice vote. All those in favor of adopting this resolution and order, please vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Rapplier, for the clarification. I appreciate it. All right. So next, we'll move back to public hearings. Our second public hearing today is from Clean Water Services. And we have, this is a continuation from a prior public hearing, or is it a new one? I messed up the order of my packet, so why don't I go to that, and it'll have the answer for me right then and there.
It's the public hearing for the item that was discussed at last week's work session.
Mm-hmm. There it is. To hold a public hearing and adopt findings exempt from competitive bidding requirements and approve the use of alternative competitive contracting process for the Cedar Mill Trunk Jenkins to Beaverton Interceptor. Project number 6882. So
I would move to recommend action.
we need to open a public hearing.
Is there a public hearing on that one?
Yep.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
I missed that. Okay.
Great. So we're going to open a public hearing. Do we have anyone signed up to testify on this? We have I forgot to do the staff report before we opened the public hearing.
Andy's right there. Yeah.
Can we do the staff report, please? I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention to the screen.
Sure. Good morning. This is Andy Braun. Good morning, Chair Harrington and members of the board. My name is Andy Braun, Clean Water Services Conveyance Engineering Division Manager. Our next public hearing is to consider Clean Water Services' request to waive the low price competitive bid procedure in lieu of an alternative competitive procurement process for the Cedar Mill Trunk Sewer and Stormwater Management Project number 6882. Next slide, please. I will present project information and findings relative to the waiver request. After considering the findings and receiving any additional testimony, you will have the opportunity to adopt legislation authorizing a procurement process that includes consideration of numerous components of the contractor's proposals. I'd like to share a brief overview of the project first. Next slide, please. This is an integrated sanitary sewer and natural resources enhancement project, including replacement of 4,900 linear feet of 36-inch diameter concrete pipe with new 48-inch diameter pipe. The project involves enhancement of Cedar Mill Creek across the Tualatin Hills Nature Park and Reeser's Fine Foods properties just south of Jenkins Road. This is a collaborative project in which the district has teamed with Washington County Land Use and Transportation to meet the stormwater requirements associated with adjacent roadway upgrades. Additional partners include THPRD and the Tualatin Watershed Enhancement Collaborative. Next slide. In order to waive competitive low-price bidding, the board must adopt findings relative to competition and public benefits. First, the board must find that it is unlikely that the exemption will encourage favoritism in awarding public improvement contracts or substantially diminish competition for public improvement contracts. In response, the process is still competitive. Selection is based upon criteria described in the solicitation for proposals. The bid opportunity will be advertised in the same venues as traditional bids. A multi-member project team will score the proposals based upon the criteria, and the district will negotiate with the contractor with the highest scoring proposal. Next slide. The second finding is that the award of the public improvement contract under the exemption will likely result in substantial cost savings and other substantial benefits to the district and the public. Under the CMGC process, the contractor provides input into the material selection and final design for district consideration, potentially resulting in a better design and/or cost savings. Involving the contractor in the design process allows for consideration of different ways to sequence the project to minimize disturbance to park patrons. The contractor's participation in value engineering during the design reduces the potential for change orders. The CMGC process allows for the ability to identify and distribute potential risks between the contractor and the district. Additional findings specifically required in the state statute are included in the board memo. Next slide, please. The district intends to score the proposals on a number of criteria, including team qualifications, experience successfully delivering similar projects, the contractor's work plan, the contractor's diversity, equity, and inclusion programs based upon input from the board at last week's work session, and finally, cost. If you approve this request, you can anticipate 2 further actions prior to the start of construction. Next slide. First, during the summer, we will bring an action for award of a contract to the selected CMGC. Then, during the late fall, approval of an amendment to the CMGC contract establishing a guaranteed maximum price. This concludes the district staff report. I'm available for any questions the board may have now or during public testimony.
Do we have any questions from the commission at this time?
Had a pretty thorough briefing at our work session last week.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just like to note that in that briefing we had in work session last week, we had a bit of discussion about the timing of this work because during this time of physical distancing, encouraging people to stay home, save lives, we have also tried to ensure that people know that they can and should get some physical exercise to help safeguard their health. And so we've seen many people using the trails and the parks throughout our community And this nature park, as pictured here, is a part of that community infrastructure and gets a lot of use. I know I was there just 2 weekends ago, and there were a lot of folks there. So we did go over the timing of this to make sure that the use of this contract and the project would not severely impact our community members, and our staff has done great due diligence in that regard. So are there any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to open a public hearing. Do we have anyone signed up to comment?
We have none.
Is there anyone in the room who wishes to comment during this public hearing? Seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing.
Madam Chair, I move that we make the proposed findings that are set out in attachment 1, there's 14 of them, and approve the use of an alternative competitive contracting process for the Cedar Mills, Junkins to Beaverton Interceptor project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you, Commissioner Scouten and Commissioner Rogers. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you. Those are the 2 public hearings and associated actions on those items that we have today. We have one more action item for today, and it's from our Office of Community Development. I'd like to invite staff up for a staff report on this very important item. Thank you for patiently waiting for us as we went through the multiple proclamations and multiple public hearings.
Thank you very much. I'm Ann Hawkins. I'm with the Office of Community Development. And on the phone or in Zoom, we also have Mari Valencia, who is another housing and community development specialist within our office. You've been hearing about numbers all day. How many cases, how many people, how many things are being addressed, how many businesses are being impacted. And I want to bring some more of those to you. Within the past 18 months, we have completed a process within our office in a format designed and regulated by HUD to determine the community needs related to formula allocation grants through HUD, Housing and Urban Development, pertaining to the Community Development Block Grant, the Emergency Solutions Grant, as well as the Home Investment Partnership Program. Within these 18 months, 17 staff members between the Washington County, the City of Hillsborough, and the City of Beaverton have participated in 14 consultations and 7 work groups, including over 105 community members. We have engaged 14 work group members from the community, 12 members of our Policy Advisory Board, 15 members of the Anti-Poverty Strategy Work Group to take information obtained and compiled by one consultant to address 6 guiding principles of how we are going to go ahead and address those monies within the county. We were able to go ahead and take those principles and divide 6 needs that we are going to be proposing to address, and we request your approval to go ahead and submit to HUD to be able to go ahead and spend the monies that have been allocated to us. There were 3 different documents that were prepared. There was a consolidated plan, which overviewed the 5-year plan, what we are going to be proposing to do and how we would be able to address it. The action plan, which will highlight actions and programs that we'll be addressing within the policy year of 2021. And we'll also be addressing the funds for the Community Development Block Grant, Home, as well as the ESG. Previously, there was a comment received regarding the focus that we had toward affordable housing and how it was not addressed as the middle or the complete section of housing within Washington County. The purpose of our review and our development of the plan was to address affordable housing. There are other agencies within Washington County. Land Use and Transportation is working with their long-range planning to address that middle housing, and information is available on their website under Housing and Community Development to address the studies and progress that they are making in that middle and complete housing numbers within Washington County. So we would like to answer any questions that you may have. As I said, Mari Valencia is available if you have questions regarding the analysis of impediments. I'd be able to address questions that you may have regarding the consolidated plan or the action plan for Washington County. And we would request your approval to go ahead and submit this to HUD.
Are there any comments or questions from board members? Commissioner Treese.
I would like to say thank you, to the department for all the work that's been done on this con plan. It was a really large undertaking. It started even before I became officially a commissioner, so I recognize that it's got a long history. I also want to thank the chair for her comments about making sure that the policies related to the screening criteria to reduce the barriers were addressed, the comments from LUT and the comments from THPRD. The entire focus has been looking straight at the community and what the community needs are. And I want to assure the commissioners that this has been a very long process, a thoughtful process with a lot of people engaged. So thank you very much.
We had quite the outreach and requesting community participation throughout the entire event. And we did hold 2 public hearings regarding that. Due to the shift in how we had to hold that venue, we were a little concerned about our response, but we actually had a 64% increase in the number of participants between this year and last year's action plan. So we were able to reach out to more and have more of a response that was received from the community.
So the staff report talked about the 2 public hearings that you had and the number of attendees that you had. But my question is, do the attendees number, okay, there were 18 members including staff. So did that number also include the members of the committee?
The first one that had 18 members was a daytime meeting that was held, and that did not include any of the Policy Advisory Board. That was a separate meeting that was held in the evening later on the week following. So to answer your question, no, it did not include the Policy Advisory Board in that 18. There was a subsequent hearing that had 28 members involved, and that did include the Policy Advisory Board.
As well as staff?
As well as staff.
So how many members of the public then?
For the first hearing, there were 4 members of staff, so that would have been 14.
Okay.
That was for the public, and then the second included 16 staff and Policy Advisory Board.
Okay. So. Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Again, that was an increase over the previous process, which is really interesting in relationship to the manner. It was a Zoom meeting, and maybe we should hold Zoom meetings into the future for this process.
I think that's what we're learning across the board, is by offering the flexibility, our community is seizing that. So the other clarification that I was looking for is in the staff report, following the second public hearing, the Policy Advisory Board unanimously endorsed forwarding the 3 plans to your board for approval. Could you probably know this off of memory, because we keep calling it the consolidated plan. So there's the Washington County plan, the City of Beaverton plan, and the City of Hillsborough plan, or because you also in the document talk about the 3 different programs. So that's why I want to be clear on what the 3 documents refers to.
The 3 documents that we're requesting approval to submit to HUD include the consolidated plan, the first-year action plan, and the analysis of impediments.
Great.
Within the consolidated plan and the action plan, it includes Washington County, City of Hillsborough, and City of Beaverton.
Got it. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And this Commissioner Treese was the board representative to the Policy Advisory Board. I was the alternate, so I read all the documents during the course of it, but knew she was at the meeting, so I didn't have to attend those. Hence, that's why I forwarded
You did attend one for me, so thank
well,
you.
that's true. Okay. But as I understand it, this is a considerable effort that's done in order to come up with the 5-year consolidated plan. So this plan will take us through this calendar year, through the fiscal year of 2024.
2025. So it'll be, it's.
Oh, the start, I always get confused by which date refers to the fiscal year, the beginning date or the end date. Thank you very much for
It'll
clarifying.
actually start July 1st of 2020, and it'll carry us through to June 30th of 2025.
Phew. So in general, you mentioned it was an 18-month program?
Correct.
So you'll be going through another one of these, and when you do, we'll have the benefit of the Census 2020 information, or hopefully, as well as the advancement of the American Community Survey results.
Correct.
Yeah, I think the work of both Root, the consultant you've hired, and the committee shows that you've really worked hard to bring in the best available data to put together a consolidated plan that meets the needs of the community as we see it today and as we envision over this next 5-year time frame. Our community has changed considerably over the last decades, but especially just in the last 10 years since the 2010 census. So I really appreciate all of the detailed analysis that's gone into it.
And with these formula grant programs, they are based upon the population, so it is very important that their community does respond to those requests for the census, because that will ultimately reflect in the amount of money that we're able to go ahead and put into the community.
I'd also like to add that I think it's important for us to continue as a commission to advocate for these funds at the federal level. And I know we're doing that. I know we're actively engaged in that, but I just want to use this opportunity to remind all of us that it's very important that we continue that process as well.
Yes, thank you for that.
Thank you. So we have these 3 plans. I've lost track. We were looking for questions and comments from the staff report. Do we have a motion yet to adopt these plans?
Move to accept.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the 3 documents for the Washington County Consolidated Plan, fiscal year 20 through 2024, the action plan, analysis of impediments, and to fair housing choice. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations, the motion carries unanimously, 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Again, thank you for all of your work.
Thank you for all of that hard work. Now, back to our agenda for today. We've taken care of all of our action items. Next, we have our second oral communications section of today's agenda. How many folks do we have signed up today?
Just one.
All right.
Okay, so I've got Dale Feek on the line. He has 5 minutes, and I am letting him go live at this time.
Do we have the timer?
We do. It's set at 5, and as soon as he starts, I can start.
Dale, you're live, so you can go right ahead.
Thank you, Kathy. Oops. All I see is the time. Oh, well.
We see you.
Chair Catherine Harrington and Commissioners Jerry Will, in particular, District 4, my commissioner. I'm Dale Feek, Chair of the Washington County Citizen Action Network and Project Director of Hillsborough on Water. First, before my prepared remarks, I just want to say I really appreciate a unanimous racial equity reading of that resolution. I much appreciate it. I know it was a little contentious at first in passing it, but I much appreciate you working together as a group and reading it. For the April 28th meeting, I emailed you written comments. It didn't work for me to make public comment. I've been working with Kathy Jacob to work that through. 6 topics for today: coronavirus, construction workers, Intel, my letter to the editor, 29 worst air polluters in Washington County, update of Stimson's Lumber Company fined $33,000, and a TV Toastmaster to interview me about climate change. The novel coronavirus, COVID-19. Thank you, Chair Harrington and Commissioners and Marnie Kyle and other members of the health safety team for the extensive reporting and hard work and commitment to keep people in Washington County safe based upon the analysis of data within various sources, in particular the information from Governor Brown and our legislative leaders. I want to thank Representative Susan McLean and Chuck Riley. In my email to you, you can read what I sent to you. Update, Representative McLean sent something out. She corrected one of the statements. She said it's not 80,000, it's 67,000 about new cases in Oregon. From Senator Chuck Riley, as he says, he's always willing to serve. Make sure you contact him in Salem. They use the most up-to-date information. Stay home, stay safe, order by Governor Brown. My concern, while driving around various construction sites in Hillsborough, I noticed that quite a few construction workers were not following wearing masks. Recommendations were standing very close to each other, conferring or working. Representative McLean stated in her letter, Washington County still has the highest case counts at 475 concurrent cases. And then my Intel letter to, I had a letter to the editor that was published in the Pamplin papers, and I asked, what's different about COVID-19 in Washington County? I had hunches. One hunch is Intel is still operating 24/7 in Hillsborough and Loa. Intel's mantra has been under former CEO Andrew Grove in his book titled Only the Paranoid Survive, or at least that is Intel's goal, to keep operating 24/7, 365 days a year. Intel has international presence, flies in as large a jails from Hillsborough Airport, can accommodate people in and out from various parts of the United States and maybe internationally. I had that published. At the time, Intel only donated $16 towards material needed. Published, I'm sure Intel read it, and they donated $50 million. So I'm glad. I think the editor had an in on Intel's donated money to the cause. Number 4 is worst air polluters in Washington County. Give you a map. It's been updated. Bonita, Commissioner Rogers ended up going out of business in the thing that they were doing then, and Cleaner Air Oregon had a pact. It's good they went out of business. So they're no longer on the 29 worst. Here is the list of them. You have it in your packet. If anybody wants to see that, that's on, please go on to Hillsborough Air and Water. You can find the link and you'll find out the 29 worst. Intel's number 1, Stimson's number 2. Then you got 4 semiconductor industries. Clean Water Services 14 and 15 hasn't changed. You got a couple more semiconductors, and then last is Banks Lumber and Banks. And there's been an update in what I sent to you. You can read that. In Stimson's Lumber Company, it's important because of the dam project. And as I said before, it was fined $33,000 for major non-compliance Title V operating permit, and it needed to be fined based upon what the DEQ person found out by investigating. Andrew Miller, CEO of Stimson's Lumber Company, was one of the largest primary opponents of Clean Energy Jobs Bill, named cap and trade lobbyist. He helped get the loggers to Salem to protest. And the last thing is an interview with me on climate change v. Toastmasters. If you have the desire to take a look at it, it's 28 minutes. That's where my heart is. Even though we have the virus, we'll get through this, but we still have to take a look at the environment and what's happening. Again, thank you again for reading the Race, Equity, and Inclusion, and I appreciate your hard work and all the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Feek. And that's it for who we have signed up today for oral communications. Next, we'll move on to board announcements. As usual, I'll announce that our future meetings are as follows. Next Tuesday, May 12th, we'll have an extended work session that starts at 8:30. Then in the early evening, we have the first of our budget committee meetings. We have the North Bethany Community Service District for Roads, that starts at 5:30, then the Enhanced Sheriff Patrol District and the Urban Road Maintenance District at 6:30 p.m. And then on Thursday, May 14th, we'll have another set of Budget Committee meetings starting at 5:30 for both Washington County's budget and the Service District for Lighting Number 1. Then on Monday, May 18th, we have the Washington County and Service District Lighting Number 1 additional Budget Committee meeting, should we need it, starting at 5:30 in the evening. And all of those meetings will also be held over Zoom as well, so members of our community can dial in, learn more about our proposed budget, as well as to hear commissioners and the laypersons who make up our budget committees ask questions as we go through the process of reviewing our proposed budget, working towards adoption later in June. We also have a public hearing later in May. Then we have our standard Tuesday, May 19th work session and board meetings. A work session at 8:30 and board meeting at 10. All those brought to you, the work session audio will be recorded, and then the board meeting will be on Zoom as well. Are there any other board communication items at this point? I would like to remind all members of our community to please be sure to vote. You should have received your ballot by now. If you've not received your ballot, please be sure to call the Washington County Elections Office. Unfortunately, during this COVID crisis, we are not able to service you through the ordinary front counter. And then this year, you do not have to put a stamp on your ballot, but we also have various drop sites for you to drop off your ballot, and those sites are listed in the voter's pamphlet statement. If you do not have your voter's pamphlet statement handy, we do have copies of them available to you here in the Public Services Building on North 155 North 1st Avenue in Hillsborough. Commissioner Treese.
I'd also like to remind the public that you are hosting a town hall next Monday.
That's right.
Correct?
Thank you.
And I believe that the information for attending that is on our website.
Yes, if you go to the calendar on the Washington County website, co.washington.or.us, and look at next Monday, is that the 12th?
The 11th.
The 11th, thank you. You can click right there and find the link for that Zoom meeting. Thank you for mentioning that. I completely forgot. Anything else today? Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Stay healthy, folks. Thank you.